Hey, how's it going, Kyle?
I'm all right. How are you, Jack?
Good.
I know that with the record being a few months old now, I think a lot of it's already been mined, but there's a few songs on here that I just keep going back to and back to. And when you started with that single, "My Mind Is for Sale," and there was a lot of talk about where it came from, and with the current administration, Trump, and all of that, I sort of went down to Gather and just focused right on that song as one of my favorite things that you've ever done. And from what I understand, that's sort of in the same ballpark. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times all the lyrics tie together just because they're all thoughts I'm going through my mind while I'm writing. And, I steal from my own songs a lot in the sense of, I'll have one song worked out in the studio and then I'll start working on another one. And then I'll start like in a particular line, I'll just start feeling like this is a whole nother idea. And then I'll take it and I'll write another song around that and I'll steal it from my own song and have to rewrite another line for that one that I took it from. So yeah, I'd say, and then definitely Gather has to do with greed in particular. But yeah, I would say it's definitely tied to My Mind Is for Sale. A lot of times it's fun to be able to take a break from a certain idea on an album with sequencing and then come back to the idea again later in the record. And that's kind of what that one does.
I mean, it's got such a cool sound to it and feel. That it's musically sort of very different than I think what the rest of the record is.
Yeah, it was fun making that song because it was one of those ones where a lot of times I'll have some kind of a melodic idea or I'll have a certain thing. That was one where we just came in the studio one day and we felt like my friend Robbie Lackeritz that was in the studio with me helping to produce it. We just started completely from scratch on that one where I started with a drum beat and we kind of made a loop out of it. And then we dumped this basket full of percussion on the floor and I played with brushes against all these different shakers and we kind of made another loop on top of that. And then it was funny because he'd have me do a pass on say like slide guitar and it was like I'd barely just tuned it and he'd be recording. He'd say, just do a pass. And then I'd play it and I'd get something that I thought was really cool. And then I'd come in and he would take like the one part where I was searching and he would just take that and make a little loop out of it again. And it was a different process for me. It was fun. It was a lot of creating it after listening, a lot of editing, which I don't always do, but a lot of bands I like do that kind of stuff between, from like Radiohead to Wilco, and a lot of the magic kind of happens in the editing. And that was one of those for me. It was really fun. It opened my mind to a whole other way that we could record in the future, which I liked.
On those themes, though, you've always been an activist, so hearing this in the song is not surprising in that sense. But I'd kind of be curious, with the current administration, has it affected, how you're an activist or your activism much, and what you've been focusing on?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. For me, I feel like I've always kind of focused on different things on every album. There'll always be the goofy love songs, just one where I'm trying to make my wife laugh around the house. And I've got those kind of songs I write in 5 minutes. And it's funny for me because those are real easy to write when you're in the right mood. And then they end up being the most popular ones. And they only take me like, I say 5 minutes, I'm joking, but a day I'll have the whole song done because it's about the fact that it's raining outside and we're stuck inside. And it's just a simple love song. And those are real easy and fun. And then I'll have the ones I spend a long time on, like, days. Sometimes I'll put the idea on the shelf and come back to it. So it feels like a year sometimes for me. And then those are always ones that usually are kind of more, they're like a deeper cut on the record and people pay a little less attention to them, or some people might pay more, but they're not the real popular ones. And the interesting thing that happened for me on this time around, because there's always been political commentary on the records. There's like Where'd All the Good People Go, or Sleep Through the Static, and, all the different records have had political, social commentary. But this time around, it was interesting because it was one of the catchier songs. And then with the administration taking office, there was a lot more attention on the fact that I had this song that was, referencing, I don't care for your paranoid, us against them, fearful kind of walls. And so suddenly every interview I was doing, there was a lot more attention on those lyrics than there had been, even on lyrics that I felt were just as poignant in the past of Where'd All the Good People Go. That was very politically tied and, talking a lot about the administration at that point. But I didn't, people kind of just clapped along and sang, and it didn't really get as much attention.
Well, when you have a guy who, even recently doubled down on his non-belief in climate change and global warming, I mean, that's got to be so frustrating because, like, I see you're in Hawaii. You sort of see this affects you, I think, more than, it affects everybody, but you get to see it closer, projection than the folks in, say, Kansas do, or something like that. They don't see the bigger problems of the world.
Mean, sure, in certain ways, yeah, definitely with the with the ocean levels. I mean, we're seeing crazy rates of ocean level rise around here with all the sandbanks and properties moving back. Anybody who's up against the ocean, it's just like it's pretty wild to watch right now how much it's changing year to year. And so we see that. We also see the accumulation of plastic building up on the east shore of all the islands, like places I used to go when I was a kid that had barely any plastic, that now there's literally, it's part of the makeup of the sand. If you dig in the sand, look at the particles, there's real bright, colorful ones, you know, that are the plastics actually becoming part of that makeup, and just a wall of plastic along these windward shores. And so, you know, they're not the same beaches that make the postcards and things that people think about when they see Hawaii, but anybody who lives here or spends any time going to those windward sides, it's heartbreaking to watch how that's building up. And so there's, you know, anything to do with the ocean, we definitely feel it and see it first out here. We're kind of a filter out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean collecting all that. So yeah, when you have a president, you know, that pulls out of the Paris Climate Agreement or sort of guts the EPA, just like for any other human, it's really frustrating, but it's something we focus a lot of our energy towards, you know, trying to include those kind of things into our shows and into our music and our packaging and every aspect of what we do. So yeah, just as another human, it can be really frustrating to see us going backwards like that.
And I see the great things you're doing. You've got the All at Once Foundation that's a part of every show, right?
Yeah, so it always gets a little confusing. The All at Once is sort of this network where it's a way for all the different nonprofits to communicate. We have the Johnson Ohana Foundation is the actual grant giving foundation where we give out money from every show to nonprofit groups in every town that we play. It's a fun part of what we do. We get to start these relationships up with these great groups doing amazing work all around the world. And a lot of those groups, they become some of my best friends. You know, we go back and work with those same groups and really respect what they all do. So it's been a great relationship builder over the years, just getting to meet all these people. And, you know, now it's fun in a selfish way. When I come into town, those are the same people who will take us on really cool hikes or down to the beach and we'll borrow surfboards and, you know, doing a beach cleanup one day and surfing the next. So we get a lot out of it too. But yeah, it's been great working with all these groups and seeing the change. And, you know, it's nice to come through town and not just leave an environmental footprint, but leave a positive footprint. So when we take off, we know there's a lot of great work being done because of the show coming through town, a lot more energy for these nonprofit groups through the funding, and also just the membership goes up from all the fans at the shows that sign up with these groups and stuff.
Well, I know there's a lot of, you know, great artists out there that sort of do similar things, but I really, really appreciate that you take that chance and those moments to push it even further. It really does mean a lot
thank you.
To everybody around here. And the movies you do, I mean, The Smog of the Sea, how that sort of led into this with that short and everything. I mean, those are so vital and important that you get the message out.
Yeah, that was really enlightening for me to get to go on that trip. You know, that's a group, again, we met that was a perfect example of a group called Five Gyres that had been tabling at our shows over the years. And every time I'd run into this guy, Marcus Erickson, that ran Five Gyres, seemed like a really interesting guy, and he'd always invite me on these trips. And then I finally said, all right, let's put one on the calendar, you know, and let's do it. And so I got to go on this data collection trip where we sailed from Florida to Bahamas and then Bahamas to Bermuda. And we'd drag a trawl behind the boat and we would collect anything that the thing would collect every time. We'd basically sort it out and we'd do counts. And it was really cool to see all the scientific work that goes into, you know, the data collection that they're basing all these facts on, that how much plastic is actually in the ocean. And we do a lot at our shows and we're really passionate about the work, but it was nice to actually see that, you know, be part of the science and then go from there.
Yeah, there's I know, you know, you get to go on these great expeditions and everything where it's sort of looking at the realness of it all as you're talking about. There's also that little story, I don't know if it's true or not, on the other side of it, just the pleasure side of it versus business, that the album got delayed because of a surfing trip. Is that true?
Yeah, it got delayed. It's almost like it's a hard one for my math brain to figure out if it helped or hurt. I was in the middle of recording and then I went on this surf trip. It slowed down the recording process, but I also wrote a song during the trip. So maybe I would have, sometimes I get in the studio, I get a little stuck, you know, I can get writer's block if I'm just in the studio too much. And then it's hard though, you're in there and you want to finish, so you kind of stay in there and it's hard to break out. But usually if I give myself a day just to be outside the studio and actually go do something real, I'll write again. And so that was, yeah, I got to go on a surf trip with my friend Kelly Slater, who's, you know, he's a 11-time world champ of surfing. So a lot of people have heard his name, but he's a friend from when we were kids, and we went on a trip, and it was great to catch up again. And I got a song or two out of that trip anyway. So I think it actually helped me finish. Who knows? I might have got too stuck in the studio.
I mean, I'm in Kentucky and I can't surf, but if Kelly Slater called up and said, "Hey, let's go surfing," I would cancel everything. I would push it off. So I can't blame you for that. And I also wanted to talk about that. I mean, the newest single, Big Sur, because there is that line I think you've talked about with a song about driving away from all the things we can't avoid. That sort of goes into that, and it sounds like that relates to all of this. Like you sort of want to get away and go away, but at the end of the day, it's still facing you.
Yeah, it's true. It's you summed it up perfect. But I think it's fun for a lot of musicians. You know, we overthink our sequencing. It's a lot of fun, and most musicians I know still like to think of things as if everybody's listening to it on vinyl, and you got a side A and a side B. And I love putting on an album, you know, on vinyl, and listening to it that way around my house. I do it a lot. And so that one for me is the beginning of side B. It's kind of the first half of the record is a lot of political commentary, and then Big Sur is, like you're saying, it's about sort of driving away from that. But what I like about it is in the song, it keeps referring to the lines, and the lines are basically physically the lines on the road as you're driving to go camping, but then metaphorically, it's those lines of society that you have to stay within. So you're trying to find freedom within these lines. And that's kind of where the second half of the record goes, a little more personal, but kind of keeps coming back together. And that song you talked about earlier, and different ones. But the sequencing is really fun for musicians. Most of my friends, we all enjoy that part. And that was the first half of side B, Big Sur.
Well, it makes for a really fun listen. It's a beautiful record, a poignant record, and a really fun listen, too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I don't know if you noticed, On and On turns 15 this year. Are you going to be doing anything with that?
Oh, that'd be fun. I feel like 15 is that's still a little youngster. I got to wait till it grows a beard or something before I do anything with it. So no big plans.
I love that record too. So if it ever comes around, you know, just one of those off moments that you're like front to back, I'm going to do it. Then I'll. Yeah,
that'd be cool. I always wanted to do that. I'd like to do a show like that. You know, it's I've never done that yet, where I just did a record from front to back. But that one's it reminds me. That's my drummer Adam Topol, who's played on all the albums since the first one. That's his favorite one. He always he likes On and On a lot.
No, man, that riff on Taylor still gets me every time. It's such a cool riff.
Oh, really cool. That one was fun. I like that. I did that. That was me after watching. There's a documentary on Jimi Hendrix where he sits on a stool and plays just an acoustic guitar. I think it's a 12-string or something, and he does these cool riffs. And it's not at all trying to sound like what he was doing, but I love just the feeling. I think it had been like a year since I'd seen it, but I remember trying to make something similar to what he kind of did in that opening to that film.
Jack, it's been a real pleasure talking to you today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate the support. Thanks for having me on here.
No problem. And we'll see you around.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.